What's up, motivators? Taren here. A couple weeks ago, we did a video talking about how I think Ironman may have pushed media, pros, athletes a little bit too far, and there are some dynamics going on in the marketplace that make me worried for the future of triathlon. I want to do a part 2 follow-up because the Pro Triathletes Organization, the PTO, has provided me with a little bit of inside info that elaborates on what we talked about why I'm worried, and we're going to see head-to-head what Ironman and PTO are bringing to the table and where the market dynamics are with how triathlon is going to unfold over the next few years.
My name is Taren Gazelle. In my 20s, I was overweight, unfulfilled, and couldn't even run to the end of the block. Over the following years, I found endurance sports, lost 65 pounds, won age groups, raced world championships, broke records, and trained and learned from some of the best athletes and coaches in the world. You too can use endurance sports to change your life and accomplish your fitness goals. You just need a system that's meant for us amateurs who want to be our best while feeling our strongest and healthiest. My company Motive offers that system, and I want to share some of the tips from it today.
All right, motivators, before we get into this, I promised the PTO that I would allow them to make a statement, which they have provided here. The PTO exists to celebrate the sport of triathlon and elevate professional triathlon on the global sporting stage. We are making significant investments into the sport to drive the following strategic outcomes. Professional triathletes are some of the greatest athletes on the planet. We want to ensure that they are fairly rewarded for their athleticism, talent, and dedication. Making triathlon as inclusive and affordable as possible to motivate committed age groupers. That sounds like something that I would write. Amateurs and new fans of all abilities and backgrounds to take part in triathlon and endurance sports. Yes. Reimagining triathlon broadcasting and storytelling to inspire a global audience to regularly watch, engage, and participate in triathlon. We are grateful for every participant, fan, volunteer, partner, sponsor, investor, and race organizer that supports this vision by investing their time, effort, and resources into the sport. And then a couple of links at the bottom where you can contact the PTO at protriathletes.org or info@protriathletes.org. What I will say is that from this point forward in the video, everything is just my opinion and not that of the PTO. This is not something that PTO has asked me to say to you in our discussions. They were actually very cautious of me even doing this video. The first thing that I want to get across is that I do not get the impression that PTO looks at it as PTO versus Ironman. That might have come across at the start of the PTO announcing that they existed and that they want to take over Ironman. I really don't get that impression anymore. Let's dive into the inside info here. So what the PTO put together internally that they shared with us that we're going to share here with you is an Excel spreadsheet where you can say, all right, what happens if an athlete races PTO races and has a certain number of placings versus what if they had those same placings in Ironman races? And what they've done here is you can look at this in 2022 or 2023. The difference being that in 2023, they are also going to have 2 additional events, and you can calculate it based off of middle and full distance, being 70.3s and Ironman distance events, or just 70.3s. The difference being that an athlete racing full distance races has a little bit more prize money. What they've outlined here is, let's say, you have a 3rd place rank in the Collins Cup, being what PTO would look at as their world championship, 3rd place in the Ironman World Championships, 7th in the Canadian Open versus 7th in the Half Ironman World Championships, 12th in the US Open versus 12th in a regional Ironman championship, and then placing 2nd overall in the year-end PTO rankings where they have a bonus versus 2nd at the Challenge overall championship. And what happens is the total PTO prize money gets calculated down here versus the total other money here. You can see that for the best athletes in the world that are placing in the very top of the world ranked races, that there is a significant benefit to the PTO races. What if we change this, however, to a very, middle of the pack kind of pro? So somebody that is placing, say, 12th in the Collins Cup and then 12th at the Ironman World Championships, and let's say 13th at the Canadian Open, 13th at the Half Ironman World Championships. Let's go to 16th at the US Open, 16th down here, and then being somewhere around 16th ranked overall. This is where it starts getting very, very interesting, because what we see is that in the lower prize money categories, that the average pro, the struggling pro, the pro that might not have $500,000 sponsorship deals, or you'd see on billboards or the covers of magazines, the ones that cobble together over the course of half a dozen races, just $10,000 in prize money. Whereas if they spent that race time at PTO races, we're looking at $63,000 an actual full-time salary. What if somebody did this in 2023 when there's a couple of additional races? Well, then it starts getting even more interesting. Let's again look at a really top tier athlete. And let's just go third across the board just for fun. Over 3.5 times more prize money for the top tier athletes by concentrating on pro races. And then let's again go with the middle of the pack pro triathletes. Again, significantly more prize money. We are talking about 13 times more prize money for the middle of the pack athletes and a full-time income. They have another chart over here where they compare placing for placing, what the top athletes would make in blue for PTO races versus if they had raced the other races, and then the multiple of how many times more prize money there is by racing the PTO races. And we see at the very top tier, there is a little bit more money, but it starts going up to about 5 times more money when you just get out of the very top 6. It only takes the 7th ranked athlete to get to almost 5 times more prize money. But then we go down to the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th ranked athletes, and the number is significantly more. We're talking 4 times more. When we get past 16, there isn't even prize money for the struggling pro out there. This is where I think market dynamics really take shape, and where I am a little bit worried about the future of triathlon, which I want to lay out what I think might happen. We need to take a quick second to thank a sponsor. Athletic Greens is a product that I use literally every single day. I like Athletic Greens as a replacement for a traditional multivitamin. Athletic Greens is made with whole foods. It contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, and because it is made from whole foods and you can mix it up as a greens powder in a shake or whatever you want, it's much easier for your body to actually absorb. If you go to athleticgreens.com/Taren, you will get a free year's supply of vitamin D with your first purchase and 5 free travel packages. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Taren to get yourself some Athletic Greens. Everyone that I know that's tried it has absolutely loved it, so you will too. So here's the dynamics and how I see it playing out. We have Ironman versus PTO, and remember, PTO is not in competition with Ironman, but I'm showing where the big players are in the market and how I see it playing out. Up here we have a whole bunch of different stakeholders, people that have some sort of interest in PTO versus Ironman, but it's not a competition. First thing that I want to show is what happens with pros. Well, there's a really good line that is, show me the incentives and I will show you the outcome. So the incentives are that there's so much more money going to the athletes if they race PTO races, and we see Sam Long choosing to race more PTO races. I think we are going to see a lot more athletes choose to race PTO races. Then up here, what about viewers? What about the amateurs, the age groupers, and what they are going to actually watch? Well, if the pros are on the PTO races, well, there's going to be a lot more viewership of the PTO races from the average person. Then the PTO are going to have the pros, they're going to have the eyeballs. Well, what happens when Ironman and PTO are going to sponsors? Well, if PTO has the best athletes in the world and they have a higher number of viewers, well, all of a sudden, the sponsors are also going to go to the PTO. What about the race entries? Well, it was always such that the Ironman World Championship in Kona was the big draw. This is what got people into the sport. The nature of this is just that people were watching a race and they were saying, hey, I want to be on that course. I want to do what those athletes are doing. Well, what if the PTO races, they have more sponsors, they have more viewership, they have the athletes that people look up to and the role models. Are there going to be more athletes that are going to all of a sudden start racing more PTO races? Let's add on to this media. I am choosing to go to PTO races this year because they are just nicer to deal with than Ironman. They're more collaborative, they are more open with all of their media. So I am going to PTO, and that is bringing even more eyeballs to PTO races. All of this is what I was worried about in the last video, where athletes, where professionals, where sponsors start leaving Ironman, going to the PTO, and all of a sudden Ironman, which was having real difficulties being profitable for years and years, all of a sudden becomes not so profitable. What happens then? It is the biggest, most influential company in triathlon. And what happens if it starts losing even more money than we know that it has over the last few years? What happens to it then? I see potentially, and again, this is not my discussions with PTO, I see what might happen is if Ironman starts losing so much money that its current ownership base says, you know what, we have to get this off the books, well, maybe PTO comes in several years and accomplishes their original goal of being able to purchase Ironman, which is what they originally intended when they announced that they were going to come out and be in the marketplace. They might end up in the same scenario just a few years later and in a different way than they originally thought. Is this a good thing? Well, I gotta say, the more I deal with the people at PTO, the more I am impressed with how they operate, how open they are with media. Now the question remains, do I think that this is a good thing for the sport or a bad thing for the sport? Well, as I've said to Sam, the CEO of the PTO, over and over, the more I speak to him, the more I like where they're heading with their plans. But I always say to him that I am cautiously optimistic and I'm eager to see how things play out. I'm eager to hear what you think. Do you think that what I've laid out here is really what will happen? And if it does happen, do you think that it will be a big detriment to Ironman? And if it is a big detriment to Ironman, do you see a possible future where the PTO can actually take over Ironman in a few years? If you're listening to this or watching this, go discuss it everywhere. I think this is a very important topic for us to actually address in the triathlon world because it is involving the biggest organizations in our sport, which we love so much and we want to have a healthy sport. How do you see it playing out? Thank you for watching, Motivators. If you're looking for a training plan that is as good as a one-on-one coach, but as inexpensive as doing it yourself, check out our Motive training app that covers triathlons, running races, duathlons, swim runs, and cycling events. There's a link in the description below where you can check out your customized training plan for free. Also, if you'd rather listen to these tips, we also publish these videos in podcast format on the Taren's Motive Method podcast, so you can check that out. And if you don't want to do either of those things, but you found this video helpful, hit us up with a virtual high five by smashing the like button below. Later, Motivators.